Good afternoon, everybody who's listening live. Let me just get my slides to work. Just a quick introduction about me and Blue Tree Savings. So my name's Will Rainey. I'm actually based in Vietnam as I speak to you today. My background is I used to work doing investment advisory for very large institutions, so insurance companies, governments, and retirement schemes. And then about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was talking to someone about my daughters, and they were sort of 4 and 6 at the time. And they said, "Oh, enjoy this time with your kids. They only grow up once." And it's a very obvious statement that everyone knows, but it had a big impact on me. And I was like, they do only grow up once, and I should be making more of the time with them. So I said to my wife, look, why don't we quit our full-time corporate jobs to spend more time with our kids? And that's exactly what we did. In 2019, we left our full-time jobs to spend more time with our kids. And the interesting thing was, when I was talking to my colleagues and people in my industry, which is the financial services industry, a lot of people said to me, how could you afford to do that? How can you live without a salary and spend this time with your family? And it's kind of shocked me that my wife and I have always grown up sort of saving, and because my background, investing our money. So we had an income from our savings. And we thought, well, in the financial services industry, surely a lot of people are doing this. They all know about money. Why are they not doing that themselves? And it turns out that a lot of why we're kind of lucky is that my wife and I, our parents taught us about saving and the benefits of doing so. So even though all these other people had the knowledge, they never learned or grew up saving when they were younger. So that's why I decided when we're spending this time with my daughters, when my daughters are at school, I wanted to spend a lot of time helping parents teach their kids about money, because it turns out that what our kids learn about money as a young age has a big impact on what their money habits and behaviors and well-being is like as adults. So that's why I started Blue Tree Savings. I write lots of blogs around how to help parents teach their kids about money using stories and analogies, some of which I'll go through today. So there's a lot of different content that I could cover. I could talk about debt, I could talk about tax, and all different topics. But today I'm going to go through what I call the 3 rules of wealth. These rules are going to be very, very simple, but yet about 95% of adults do not follow these 3 rules of wealth. So today I'm going to go through what these rules are, why most people don't follow them, and then I'm going to give you some tips and stories to help you teach your kids to follow these rules from a young age. And you don't have to worry about how good you are with numbers, your financial situation. All parents can help their children follow these 3 rules of wealth and make a big difference to their future financial well-being. And that means not having money worries, which so many people are struggling with today in the developed world. So let me get straight to it and just go through what are these 3 rules of wealth. Again, very simple, but hard to follow. The first one is simply spend less than you earn. Seems simple. Second one, invest what you save. Third one, be patient. Now, these 3 rules, as I say, sound very, very simple. But if you think about wealth being like health, it's simply saying eat less than you burn in terms of calories and be sensible. Very simple to say, but very hard to follow. So why are these 3 rules very hard to follow? Well, let's go through number 1 and 3. So spend less than you earn and be patient. Essentially, we've got companies out there, pretty much all companies, who have these big marketing teams who are there to encourage us all to spend our money. They are spending billions, collectively billions of pounds and dollars to try and get us to spend our money, and not spend it in the future, but spend it now. They don't want us to have our money in our bank accounts. They want us to go out and spend it with their companies so their companies can grow and grow. And these companies are getting so clever. They know all the little tricks to make us go out and spend our money. They'll say, you're going to make a saving. And even though we're actually spending, they make it sound like we're saving some money. And they know, and especially the social media companies, they know us better than we know ourselves. And therefore, they know every trick to try and twist us, to try and get us to spend that extra pound out there. And if we grow up not knowing anything about money and not having any kind of habits, we're essentially going like this little boy against this sumo wrestler. We're not going to win. And actually, we find that most adults, as we know, spend more than they earn. So companies are against us. The second one is invest what you save. And there's a good reason why most people do not follow this rule. And that's simply they're never taught. It's not on any kind of school curriculum about how to invest. So most people grow up thinking that investing is quite scary. It's quite complex. And what I'm going to go through today is when we get to this particular rule, I'm going to go through how I taught my, at the time, 7-year-old about investing in a very, very simple way. And what I want to show you is that investing is actually it's like a sheep in wolf's clothing. So not the other way around. It actually doesn't have to be as scary as most people perceive it based on what they see on social media or in the actual media itself. So hopefully this is going to be something not only useful for your kids, but hopefully useful to you. So before I go through how to teach your kids or help them follow these 3 rules of wealth, I want to give you a little system that I use with all parents. And that's when talking to your kids about money maybe for the first time, is get your kids to think of money like seeds. This makes money more visual. It gives you a completely different language. It's more fun and engaging when talking to kids about your money. So they can take a seed and they can give that seed away, and that's just like spending. But straight away, children will know that a seed, if it's planted, will grow. And this is something that is an important lesson about money, because we know that if we put money away or save money, that money over time, especially if invested, which I'll come on to, can grow, and it can grow into a tree. And that's why I called my company Blue Trees. When I'm talking to my daughters, I don't say, oh, you have this much money. I say, this is how many blue trees you have. And my daughters will say, Daddy, can we put some of our pocket money to grow some more blue trees? And it's just a much more engaging conversation. And then they can also think about money into the future. And that's such a powerful mindset to have, because most people see money for today. What can I spend it today? What bills have I got to pay today? Ability to think about money in the future is how they can really build good financial health. So what we want for all our children is for them to essentially grow their own kind of financial forest over time. And it's those people who have saved and grown this kind of financial forest are the ones that are generally financially healthy. So when we're talking to our kids about the 3 rules of wealth, we do not want to use this wording of spend less than you earn, invest what you save, and be patient. It's very adult and a bit boring. So let's put it into this trees and money analogy sense. So the first one, instead of saying spend less than you earn, we can say, right, you've got to build your forest. In order to do that, every time you get some seeds, make sure you keep 1 out of every 10. So just save 1 out of every £1 out of every 10 pounds they receive. And that's spending less than they earn. Second one is invest what you save. We say to them, now you've kept one of those seeds, you need to plant it. There's no point in keeping your money under your bed. We need to plant it so it can grow into a tree. And the third one, we have to just say, let your trees grow. Children know instinctively that trees don't grow overnight. This takes time. And the more that they can learn to be patient and let their trees grow, the better they will be. And they'll soon grow up having this financial forest. The younger they start planting, the better. So that's given us a framework. Now let's go through each of these rules in turn to give some tips and some stories that you can use with your children to make sure they do follow them. So the first one, spend less than you earn. In kids speak, keep 1 out of every 10 seeds they receive. This is really important because in the UK, 63% of adults are in debt, excluding their mortgages. So that means that 63% of adults in the UK are not following the first rule of wealth, because if they did, they wouldn't be in debt. So just by getting our children from a young age to follow this rule, the more likely they are to avoid debt. And that's one of the biggest sources of financial stress and anxiety amongst adults today, is being in debt. So the more we can help our kids avoid that, the better. And the key is to make sure they follow this first rule of wealth. And the younger that they start to follow it, the more it just becomes a habit. And I say, kids will form many of their adult money behaviors by the age of 7. So if you can help your children save every time that they get a little bit of money from a young age. But let's do a little story to help. So when I've been talking to my daughters, I always kind of try and think of bedtime stories that are kind of engaging, but also have a kind of money lesson. Not all of them, but some nights. So here's a story that I hope you can remember and share with your kids. So it's based on a man named Richie. Many years ago, he went off to a far distant island in search of gold. And he was very lucky. When he got there, he'd always find gold. And he went from being poor to very rich very quickly. And he would go to the shops and buy nice clothes and eat really nice meals. But then after a while, his luck changed and he couldn't find any more gold. And as he had spent all his gold, he started to get really, really hungry. And he was walking around the island, and luckily he came across this big forest. And there was a lady, which everyone called Grandma, was there at this house, and it was her forest. And she welcomed Richie into her home and gave him some food. And she said, look, you need to make sure you always have food, money for food in the future. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to grow a forest just like mine. I'll give you some seeds, and all you have to do is go to the other side of the island and start to plant them. Richie thought that was very simple. So he gets the seeds, he thanks Grandma, and he makes his way to the other side of the island. But on his way, he has to go through this village. And it's the village he used to always go through when he had gold. And he knew everyone. So he started walking through the village. And first of all, he comes across his old friend, Bill the baker, he hadn't seen for a long time. And Bill was so excited to see him and said, come in, I've got your favorite carrot cake. And Richie was like, no, I'm off to go and plant some seeds. I don't have any money. Maybe next time. But Bill was like, no, I know how much you love this. I freshly cooked this cake. Look, if you've only got seeds, give me 3 of your seeds. And then you'll still have plenty left to go and grow your forest. And Richie thought about it. He said, oh, well, I've got 10 seeds. I'll be giving 3 away. Fine. I can't wait to eat this carrot cake. So he goes and eats his carrot cake and says, thank you, Bill. I'll see you in the future. Carries on through the village with his 7 seeds. But then he comes to the tailor. So it's Millie the tailor. And she said, oh, Richie, I haven't seen you for a long while. Where are you off to? And he says, I'm off to plant my seeds to grow my own forest, so I'll never be hungry again. And she said, you cannot go and plant seeds in those clothes you're wearing. That's one of the finest suits I've ever made you. You're going to get it ruined and you're going to have to spend lots of money in the future getting your suit fixed. Why don't I make you a nice outfit just for planting your seeds? You can always go back to Grandma and get some more seeds tomorrow. And then you'll be ready to go and start planting your forest. And Richie thought about it and thought, yes, you're right. I'm going to ruin this suit and I'll have to pay lots more money in the future. Okay, so he pays his 7 seeds over, gets his beautiful outfit, he's happy as he can be. And then the next day, goes back to Grandma and says, look, I didn't want to ruin my suit. So please, can I work with you to get some more seeds? And I'm going to go and start planting my forest today. And then Grandma goes, okay. She gives him some more seeds. And off he goes the next day. And again, he goes through the village. He ignores the baker. He ignores the tailor. And then he gets, just as he's leaving the village, his old friend Derek comes up and says, oh, Richie, it's so good to see you. Check out these new sunglasses I've got. They're amazing. And it's the best thing ever is today you can buy 1 pair of glasses and you get a 2nd pair for free. And Richie's like, I don't need sunglasses. I used to love wearing sunglasses and I used to lose them all the time. But at the moment, my focus is on growing my forest. But he said, but think about it. You always lose your sunglasses. And when you have your forest and all these seeds, you're going to want some sunglasses in the future. So instead of buying 2 later, you just buy 1 now and you'll be saving yourself money in the future. Again, Richie thought about it and says, oh, yes, I will be saving myself money in the future. And as you can guess, he handed over his 10 seeds and got his 2 sunglasses, thinking that tomorrow he can always go and earn some more seeds. And again, he went back to Grandma and Grandma told him, look, every time you go through the village, someone is always going to convince you to give away your seeds and make you think that you're saving money in the future. The best thing you can do is, instead of going through the village, is to go around the village, plant your seeds, and then after you've planted your seeds, then go back through the village and see your friends. And that's exactly what Richie did. Instead of going anywhere near the village, he'd always go around the village, plant his seeds, and then go through and see his friends. And after a long period of time, soon enough, he had his own forest and never went hungry again. And that's the end of that story. And it has so many different messages. It has the link between money and seeds. It shows kids just the power of how easily it is to give the seeds away if you go through the village. But the key piece is it helps kids realize that they have to make saving money before they spend it into a habit. And this is so, so important. If your children do learn to save a little bit of money every time to start growing this forest, then as they grow up, when people say, oh, how have you managed to save that much money? They'll just be, it's just what I do. I've been doing it since I was a young child. So every time they may get some pocket money or tooth fairy or Christmas or birthday, encourage them to save just a little bit. And again, it only needs to be 1 out of every 10. So it doesn't mean they can still have 90% of the money that they ever receive and spend it, which shouldn't mean that their fun is limited, but just saving that little bit. And it doesn't matter how small it is in terms of money, it's all about the habit. And this is why I encourage all parents who have the resources to do so, is to give their kids a little bit of pocket money each week so that it can become a habit. The more times that they have money, and it doesn't matter how much, the more times they get to make decisions, the more times it's going to become a habit. So if you do, and you can, I'd really encourage you to give your kids a little bit of pocket money, just so they can get in the habit of saving just a little bit of it every time. And it has to be every time, so it becomes a habit. So if they do that, they'll be following the first rule of wealth, and then they'll be better than 93% of adults today, and they'll only be kids. That's a quite a powerful position to be in, even as a kid. So remember, most adults don't have a single tree. Hopefully, your kids will have a forest. But now we need to grow our forest. And that's what we talk about when we say invest what you save. We don't want them just to have their seeds and stick those seeds under the bed. We want them to be planted and grown. So most people, as I said at the start, most people don't really know about investing. So how do we teach our kids? So here's what I did with my kids. We save a little bit of money each month for our kids, and we invest in lots of different companies via a simple investment fund. So I said to my daughters, we invest your savings each month. This money goes to thousands of different companies, just a little bit. One of them is McDonald's. So essentially I told my kids, you own a piece of McDonald's, and they got so excited because we were sitting in McDonald's at the time, and they loved the fact that they owned the chairs, the tray, the burger that they were eating. But it wasn't just them. They own lots of different McDonald's all around the world. And McDonald's use the money that we invest in a couple of ways. They use that money to help open new restaurants or create new burgers. So McDonald's can make more money. And the more money they make, essentially the more money you make. And then that helps grow your blue trees. And this got my children understanding they can actually own a piece of the company rather than just spending money. And we did this. We walked around the shopping mall. We saw an Apple store and said, look, all those people buying their iPhones, you own a piece of that. So some of that money that's being spent actually goes to you. Essentially, whenever money gets spent at a company, the company gets richer, and the company is owned by people. And those people are the investors. So we want to be investors. And here's the reason why we want to invest. If we invested £1,000 30 years ago, if we put it in a high street bank, we'd get about just £350. But if we invest it over a long period of time, that £1,000 over a long time can grow into thousands upon thousands. And this is something, it might not happen overnight, but over a long time, historically, over the start of the stock market, people who have invested have grown their money significantly more than those who have just saved it. And that's just showing when we spend our money, it goes to companies, those companies get richer. So as long as people keep spending, those companies will get larger, and those people who invested will see their money grow. And I understand that people get scared about investing. They see headlines of stock market tumbles or companies going bust, like Blockbuster, and they get very worried. So the way I talk to my daughters about this is, this does happen. We can talk about the McDonald's in the virus scenario. So when everyone was in lockdown, people weren't going out and buying their burgers. Actually, the stock market actually fell quite heavily. But as soon as people were starting to see that the virus is going to be controlled, people were going to go out and start buying their burgers again, and the stock market recovered. And that's what's happened over and over again. So here's a chart of the stock market over many, many years. And we can see here it's had a lot of bumps. So a lot of stock market crashes, but it's grown and recovered. And the analogy that I use is this trees. And I say, well, remember, when we're investing, we're planting a tree. But when we plant a tree, sometimes there are storms and our tree can get broken. And that's an analogy to a stock market. But we know that if we plant a tree and there's a storm, after the storm, the trees grow back bigger and stronger. And that's exactly what we see here with the stock market. So sometimes it might feel hard and hurt when we see our stock market or a storm, but as long as we're patient, it will grow back bigger and stronger. And that's why we need this third rule. We need to be patient. We need to let our trees grow, even if there are storms. And it's so important that we teach our kids to be patient. We might think, oh, it's just a natural, they're either patient or they're not. We can teach our children to be patient. And there's a study called the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment, where they essentially studied the impact of children who are patient versus those who are not, and looked at what happened over time. And it's essentially the experiment was they put a kid in a room with one marshmallow and said, after 15 minutes, if you don't eat that marshmallow, you get 2 marshmallows. And then they followed the ones to see if the ones who didn't eat the marshmallow and got the 2, what happened to them compared to the others. And they turned out so much more, from a well-being perspective, more healthy in terms of financials, but in terms of relationships and in working. So we need to teach our kids to be patient from a young age, especially in today's world where everyone wants everything now and we want our same day delivery. It's becoming harder and harder to be patient, but more and more essential to be patient. So here's a couple of tips to teach your kids to be patient. The first is to keep it small. By this, I mean, don't withhold them and say, right, you're not allowed to watch any TV for 2 weeks and then you can watch as much TV as you want. So that's just too big and making it too hard. So the example I give is to say, well, if they've got a chocolate bar, let them eat most of it, but get them to keep a little bit of the chocolate bar in the fridge for tomorrow or the day after. Again, it allows them to still eat a lot of the chocolate bar, but means that they get they're still being patient with the last bit. And the next day they'll see how good it is to have that extra bit in the fridge. And the second bit is to reward them every time they are being patient. Reward them. So if it's the chocolate bar example, maybe give them an extra little treat if they do save. And again, that could be TV time, that could be even if they have money. So for example, with pocket money, if they're saving up for a toy, say to them, if you save, I don't know, 80%, I'll give you the extra 20% towards whatever you're buying. So again, give them a little reward if they show that they can be patient. And soon enough, they will learn that patience is rewarded. And in the real world, patience is rewarded. So they're my 3 rules of wealth that I really hope you will help encourage your kids to follow. So spend less than they earn, invest what they save, and be patient. Using the seeds and tree analogy and using pocket money as the tool to allow them to make decisions to start following these rules from a young age.